following is a podcast brought to you by the Alex Kirsch Project.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The GOP just can't seem to stop winning due to the fact that they have had a great degree of difficulty voting for the new Speaker of the House. Kevin McCarthy has been voted down 13 times so far. Today marks the second anniversary of the insurrection on our nation's capital. How are people marking this occasion, and will anything be done about what happened that day? Biden was recently in Covington, Kentucky to tout the rebuilding and renovation of the Brent Spence Bridge. Why is this bridge so important, and why is this such a special occasion? Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg and his husband Chasten were on the Netherlands via military aircraft because Secretary Buttigieg was a presidential delegation to attend Invictus. Why is there such a fallout from this? The Kremlin has called for a ceasefire in the war in Ukraine to recognize Orthodox Christmas. Yet somehow this has been ignored in Kyiv as attacks by apparently Russian forces against Ukrainian forces has continued through this ceasefire. And finally, Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin is awake and finally able to communicate via pen and paper and voice. Is his injury going to cause for change to be made in the NFL finally? All of this on this week's episode of Current Events on Tap. Everybody, I'm sorry I did not say Happy New Year last week, but I was dealing with a little bit of food poisoning. I'm sorry, but welcome to another episode of Current Events on Tap with your host Alex Kirsch, a podcast from the Alex Kirsch Project. Hey, that's me, Army retiree, truck driver, pragmatic progressive, political commentator, and guess what? I do a little clout chasing from time to time. If this is your first time listening, please do me a solid, hit like and share and subscribe to my Spreaker, YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. This podcast gives you this week's current events, and I also like to do what I call
the Beer of the Week.
When I do the Beer of the Week, I pick one beer and I review it based upon price and presentation, pour, aroma, taste, and then I give it an overall rating. Be sure to catch me every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Spreaker, and then catch me at your earliest convenience on all the other platforms I've labeled as YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Just type in the Alex Kirsch Project or Current Events on Tap, and you will find this podcast. Now, be advised, there is going to be some coarse language on this podcast. I do apologize in advance, but I am a veteran and I am a truck driver. It is kind of part of my vocabulary. So I hope everyone had a great Christmas, and I hope everybody had a good, safe New Year's. Christmas was very cold. New Year's is more reasonable. However, last weekend I kind of came down, was recovering from a little bit of food poisoning that I kind of encountered. I don't know where I got it from. I don't know what happened. I guess there was a bug going around. At first I thought it was because of some food that I got in Gary, Indiana, but I think it could have just been a bug that I possibly caught. So let's just say that it was a very short week for me when I was out on the road, but thankfully my fleet managers were very gracious and they let me actually take some time off so I could actually recover from that. But last week I didn't do a show just because I just really didn't feel up to it. I did, however, actually end up burning through an entire season of Moon Knight on Disney Plus, and I tell you, that's a great show. If you haven't watched Moon Knight yet, I tell you what, it is absolutely fantastic. I like the fact that they actually took the time to develop and build a character instead of just, have wow special effects, really cool action scenes. They actually focused upon the character, which I think is so important to make the story better. I mean, all the characters were great. The characters are fascinating. The story was really good. The second to last episode was the best episode of the season. It was so good. Such great character arcs and great character building. Man, it was just so good. But I tell you, New Year's, it was kind of, Claire and I just kind of kept it simple. We went to bed early. Then I woke up and it was just another day for me, actually. So a lot better than my last New Year's, because last New Year's I was in Greensboro, South Carolina, and I pulled into a yard, an Estes yard, and the trailer I had to pick up was right up against another trailer. Now the problem was that You know, there was nobody else around. There was no other yard jockeys because they were all off because it was the holiday. So the only person that was there was the security guard. So I had to move one trailer after the other. And then once I finally got to hook up to the trailer, it was too low to the ground. I tried lowering the suspension. This wasn't with this company. It was with Covington. And it took me about 45 minutes to crank this thing up. Now, everybody say, oh, well, it couldn't have been that bad. No, when you're trying to lift, or not lift, but like crank up manually a 30,000 pound trailer with a 30,000 pound freight, it's going to take you a while to crank that shit up. And I tell you, I was exhausted. I was already tired, and my shift had barely started. Oh, God, it was horrible. So this New Year's wasn't quite nearly as bad, but it was a really good week for me this week, and it's good to get back in the swing of things, and it's good to get back in the swing of doing my podcast. So anyway, I hope everyone's had a great holiday. I hope everybody has really been keeping themselves up to speed with what's going on in the world. Oh my God, it is absolutely crazy. But before we get into the current events, it is time for
The Beer of the Week.
The beer of the week this week is Bell's Amber Ale. While it's originally based out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, this one was brewed in Comstock, Michigan. Now, before I actually talk about the beer itself, let's go into the history of the brewery. Bell's Brewery was founded by Larry Bell, who attended Kalamazoo College, and began his trek into homebrewing in the 1980s, and opened his first homebrewing supply shop in 1983. Hey, what a great year. That was 40 years ago. That's actually my birth year, actually. I'll be 40 this year. In downtown Kalamazoo is when he opened up his supply shop. Now, due to his innovative prowess and popularity with the locals, he started to brew his beer more locally in a 15-gallon soup pot and sold his first ever beer in September of 1985, which was tonight's beer of the week, Amber Ale. In 1986, Bell's family grew to Larry and 9 other employees who bottled and delivered their own beer over the course of 4 years. In 1987, they brewed their first porter called Robust Porter, which has the distinct flavors and ingredients of chocolate, coffee, and roasted barley. In 1988, it saw the birth of his first Kalamazoo Stout. Now, let's jump forward to 1989. Bell's began producing roughly 500 barrels of beer annually until they were able to find their first wholesaler, which is located in Ann Arbor called Rave Associates. Fast forward to the year 2003, Bell's Comstock Brewery opened a 32-acre site and a facility with 35,000 square feet, where eventually a keg line would be installed for Bell's to produce their creations into. In 2008, the brewery managed to be able to ship more than 100,000 barrels in 1 year. And in 2010, Larry received a Brewers Association Recognition Award. Bell's through the years has created an abundance of different flavors like Oberon, which I've had, it's really good, Java Stout, Two-Hearted Pale Ale, Lager of the Lakes, Consecrator Doppelbock, and Bourbon Barrel Aged Expedition Stout. There are so many different flavors, but of course I had to pick another Michigan beer because good God, there are so many different kinds of beers and breweries located in the state of Michigan. And because now I'm a resident of the state of Michigan, why not stay true to the new roots I'm developing while I'm here? But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about this week's beer of the week. So once again, it is Bell's Amber Ale. It has an alcohol percentage of 5.8%. The type of beer that it is, it's American Amber Red Ale. Now, let's go ahead and talk about price and presentation. Let's give this one a nice, solid 4 out of 5. Now, I bought this 6-pack at the local liquor store in Cairo, but you should be able to find this anywhere in the state of Michigan, but it can also be found in Pennsylvania, Iowa, Kentucky, Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, don't you know. It will run you about $10.99 depending on the state, but that's also not including the tax. Now, the presentation is a beautiful brown bottle with a heron on the front of it, and the label on the back says, "The beer that helped build our brewery. Bell's Amber Ale features both toasted and sweet caramel notes from carefully selected malts, balanced with herbal and citrus hop aromas, capped by a clean bitterness. It's incredibly versatile with food, but very tasty on its own." You know, I actually kind of like the fact that this being their first beer they ever made, it seems that this place has not forgotten its roots, and it's proud of its product. However, how does it fare with the rest of the necessary senses to make this a good beer? So when I pour this, it's got a very nice, beautiful, reddish color to it. I really kind of like that, so I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. Now, there's not a whole lot of foamy head to go along with it, but the color is absolutely gorgeous. I absolutely love this color red. It kind of reminds me of the Independence Harbor Ale, but it's really quite a beautiful color. Now, I would like to see a little bit more of a foamy head, but I think if I got this on tap, I probably would get that. So we'll give this a 4 out of 5. Now let's go with the aroma. Time to take the absolute whiff. I'll give it a 3 out of 5. It's got a very pleasant smell to it. I'm really not picking up the citrusy aromas, but I am picking up the malts. The caramel, not quite so much. It's still a very pleasant. It's not the worst smell ever, but it's a very, not too bad of a smell, honestly. Now let's go in for the taste. We'll give this also a 3 out of 5. It's not a bad taste. I'm not really picking up any of the other flavors. It's not like a standardized regular beer that you would actually taste, but you kind of pick up the malts afterwards. And yes, I definitely pick up the afterwards bitterness. Now, it's not like a bad bitterness, but it's like that aftertaste bitterness that you get from that initial sensation that your taste buds get. Like once you take that first drink, it's a very pleasant, very smooth tasting beer, but then you get that little bit of bitterness afterwards. It's not a bad bitterness. It's, I actually kind of like it, honestly. So it's not terrible. You know what? Let's go ahead and upgrade this to a 4 out of 5, okay? I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Because that bitterness is actually not too bad. So what am I going to give this? I'm going to give this an overall 4 out of 5. Let's go ahead and give this a 4 out of 5. It's a very nice beer. I would definitely drink this again. It's got a very smooth flavor to it. I really love the presentation. I love the history behind it, too. I love the fact that, they're very, very proud of their heritage. They're very proud of their history, whatnot. And it's a nice tasting beer. I'm a real big fan of red ales. So, yep, let's give it a 4 out of 5. Anyway, so I highly recommend this beer. Please feel free to go out and buy it if it's in the area. If you're all about the beer drinking, go ahead and give this one a shot. I actually highly recommend it. But now, let's get into the serious topics. It's time for the current events of the week. It's day 4 of the selection for the next Speaker of the House. And after 13 votes, Kevin McCarthy is still not the Speaker of the House.
Did you see that jerk?
Yeah, that's right, folks. The House, however, will reconvene tonight at 10 p.m. or, if you're in the military, 2200 hours, and we will then find out what happens if the GOP, who managed to win the House, will in fact vote for Kevin McCarthy. But there was a huge infighting between the regular Republicans and the MAGA Republicans. Hell, there's even infighting between the MAGA Republicans, whether they even want Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. Some of them even want Jim, I allowed rapes to happen at Ohio State, Jordan as Speaker of the House, which I think is completely preposterous. Who really wants that jokester in there? And yesterday, Matt Gaetz even had the audacity to nominate Trump as Speaker of the House. I mean, Trump is already running for another term for president, but Matt Gaetz decided to do his little, I love you, Trump. He looked so proud of himself, too, when he did it. His ass-kissing duties were done for that day. But the GOP has become an absolute clown show. I mean, the damage that they have caused themselves by welcoming into the fold George Santos, of all people, who lied pretty much about everything in his entire life, even about his mother dying on 9/11. Now, which every American should be offended by this, especially New Yorkers. I mean, this is the guy who you elected? Really? But what does the GOP do, especially when the MAGA GOP? They start with their whataboutisms, as always. Laverne Spicer, another failed MAGA candidate, starts in on Ilhan Omar, claiming she married her brother, which still has not been proven, but yet people are still talking about it like they have proof about this, but they don't. It's an absolute clown show, but hey, when you elect clowns, you're gonna get the circus. Now, this is something we have not seen in over 100 years. I mean, we are literally seeing history happen right before our very eyes because the GOP cannot seem to come together to decide on one person. Now, I need to remind everybody in the audience, the Speaker of the House is second in line to succeed the president behind the vice president. So it's not like you're electing a class president. Without a speaker, business that is normally conducted in the House of Representatives, that when it's in session, is essentially stopped. So what does that mean for us? Near future, not quite so much. But for the long term, it could get worse. Now, this could be resolved tonight, all right? It could be resolved tonight, and Kevin McCarthy could finally get the votes that he needs. However, if this should continue, legislation that gets brought before the House isn't going to get passed because they're still in cahoots trying to find out who's going to be the next Speaker of the House. However, we need to remember something. The MAGA GOP isn't concerned with the business for the American people. They have three things on their mind. Inflation, which I'm very, very interested to know what their solutions are, because they haven't brought any solutions forward. Like, they didn't bring forward any solutions in regards to the Inflation Reduction Act. They didn't have any ideas for that, but they just said, oh, this is a bad idea. But they didn't bring anything else forward, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. Immigration, again, no solutions, just parroting build big walls. And finally, investigations. That's right. They still are talking about how they're going to investigate Hunter Biden, which I've said time and time again. If you can find evidence and prove Hunter Biden broke the law, fine, go for it. Nobody is above the law. It's just absolutely just mind-boggling. Like, this is what their priorities are. Not putting forth legislation that actually benefit the American people, but they're just going to talk about inflation, which they have had plenty of time to address the inflation issue, but they haven't. Instead, they're just blaming other people for why we're at this point. Then they're going to talk about immigration, like that's the number one concern in America, which I don't notice immigration being a huge issue. It is an issue because you got people in this country that are flying people all over the country without letting, like, for example, on Christmas Eve, Greg Abbott once again did another stunt by sending migrants over to Vice President Harris's house. I mean, we all know what he was trying to do, trying to like score more points to the people that are anti-immigration and whatnot. But the thing is that immigration is a problem. It is an issue. It's something we have to address, but it's very, very complicated at the same time, though. And I don't have the answers to stuff like this. And eventually, whenever I want to take a deep dive into immigration, I'm going to talk to the experts when it comes down to stuff like this. But the investigations is the one that I'm just really perplexed by. I mean, what exactly do you hope to find out? I mean, we already talked about, like, what's wrong with, like, the pictures they found is just pictures of Hunter Biden's penis. I mean, is this really a matter of national security? I mean, what exactly are you hoping to find out? If you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Hunter Biden's guilty of something, then fine, go after him. But I think this is just going to be just like Hillary Clinton's emails, nothing but a nothing burger, honestly. But because they feel like Pandora's box was open because this administration is going after Trump, that they think, well, wait a second, that means now we can go after Hunter Biden. Let's go after Hunter Biden. I mean, it kind of goes something like this. Every time I hear people talk about, we're going after Hunter Biden, I'm like, okay. No. We're serious. We're going after Hunter Biden. Okay, I heard you. No. You don't understand. We are going after Hunter Biden. It's like, no, I heard you. I don't care. Haha, you stupid libs. You're not going to get any cool points. You're not, like, really bothering me by going after Hunter Biden. I mean, I don't know exactly what you're going to prove, actually. But the amazing thing is that the people that are going after Hunter Biden, talking about they want to uphold law and order, these yokels don't give a damn about law and order, especially those who support the traitors who stormed our nation's capital 2 years ago today, which is my next talking point starting now. That's right. Today marks the anniversary of the day which Trump incited a mob to head to our capital to ensure that the certification of a legitimate election did not take place. But it did take place. Fortunately, the legitimate election took place. Mike Pence did his job that day. Now, the mob, as we all know, was full of people who believed the election was stolen because of lies pushed by the divider-in-chief. These people arrived outside our nation's capital with a set of gallows that they said was for Mike Pence. They used flags to beat on Capitol police officers, and a QAnon traitor by the name of Ashley Babbitt was shot justifiably by Officer Michael Byrd and killed. His action resulted in no more traitors breaking through the barrier. He did his job, and people who are complaining about her death have only one person to blame. That blame lies with Donald Trump and every other voter fraud. The election was stolen, the Dominion voting machine conspiracy theorists out there who pushed these lies. The election was not stolen. Now, I don't know how many times I have to say it. I mean, how many times do anybody have to say it? How many people need to hear this? As many times as it takes, as far as I'm concerned. Now, never in the history of this country has such an action ever taken place. And if there's any reason to have some TDS, also known as Trump derangement syndrome, this is number one as far as I'm concerned. Not just because Trump was the most divisive president we ever had in recent history, but because he instigated the mob in the first place. Now, had Trump not been spreading these lies and just accepted the election that he lost, but instead he chose to lie. I mean, had he not lied about the election being stolen and name-dropping people like Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss, which led to him being threatened, doxxed, and harassed to the point where Ruby doesn't even want to say her name in public. Had he not done this, Ashley Babbitt would be alive. There wouldn't have been an insurrection. This is all Trump's doing. He is alone solely responsible for what happened on January 6th. And if that isn't obvious to you, you're either an idiot or you're in denial. It is that simple. But the amazing thing is we have people in Congress who show more empathy to the people who stormed our nation's capital than the brave men and women who protected it from those insurrectionists. I listened to every single January 6th committee hearing, and I can also say it was some of the most compelling testimony I've ever heard. It was a bipartisan committee, regardless of what you think or hear. People on both sides of the political aisle came together to share with the people their findings. Now, what's most shocking is that the many people, especially those that are on Trump's payroll, who think nothing happened that day, that it wasn't a big deal, or it wasn't an insurrection, and this was all bullshit, never bothered to plead in their own defense except to plead the Fifth Amendment. People like Mike Flynn. Yeah, Mike Flynn pled the Fifth, which is his right to do so. You got all these other people that are on Trump's payroll that all pled the Fifth, even though they said nothing happened on January 6th. Even Roger Stone, Trump's right-hand man, his little attack dog, pled the Fifth. Even though I seem to keep recalling that Trump says, if you plead the Fifth, you're obviously hiding something, so what are these clowns hiding? It's amazing like how the guys that say nothing happened pled the Fifth, which is their right. Again, it is their right to plead the Fifth. However, what are they pleading the Fifth for? What exactly are they hiding? But the amazing part is the people who came forward gave their testimony from both sides of the political spectrum. They're the ones that are considered the liars. Convenient how that is. Now, whatever you people in denial who think January 6th wasn't a big deal, just remember, your silence and your ignorance is going to come back and make you look like the fool that you definitely are. I denounced the riots through the summer of 2020 openly. I said what happened in those cities was horrible and burning down entire businesses solves nothing. Just like on January 6th, these people stormed our nation's capital looking to cause harm to Vice President Pence, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and some were even looking to cause harm to AOC. Never forget that their intention was not to ask for like a cup of sugar. These people weren't asking for, an audience. No, these people were there to cause harm. They were there to cause harm to Mike Pence. And you can look at the video and just tell me if you actually believe that these people were there peacefully protesting. Some of these people, there were people there that were peacefully protesting, but the majority of the people that stormed that nation's capital were out for blood that day. I mean, you don't pull a gallows in front of our nation's capital and think that's not going to mean anything. If you really think those gallows meant absolutely nothing, let me ask you a question. Let's take a hypothetical situation. Let's take those same gallows, right? And I want you to park that in front of a black family's house. How do you think that's going to be interpreted? How do you think that's going to be received? Is that going to be received as, oh, that's not a threat. It's just for fun. It's not. It's a direct threat. These people stormed our nation's capital to cause harm to a vice president I didn't even like. But the fact of the matter is Mike Pence said, no, I'm not going to be intimidated. We're going through with this. We're going to continue to vote and we're going to not vote, but we're going to continue to count these votes or these electors and certify this election. That's what he was doing there that day because he knew, in accordance to the Constitution of the United States, he could not overturn the election just because Trump wanted him to. These people stormed the nation's capital on this day 2 years ago to cause harm, all based on a lie that the election was stolen. It was not stolen. So this week, President Biden, along with Senator Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader from Kentucky, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, and Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, all gathered in Covington, Kentucky to tout the long-awaited project of renovating and rebuilding sections of the Brent Spence Bridge. Now, for those not aware, the Brent Spence Bridge is the bridge that connects Covington, Kentucky to Cincinnati, Ohio. If you drive on I-75 northbound or southbound, chances are you're going to drive over this bridge, especially if you're going from, let's say, Tennessee to Ohio. You're going to take 75 north and you're going to drive over this bridge, okay? Now, Claire and I have driven across this bridge many, many, many times. I've even done it in an 18-wheeler. And there's parts of it that are always under some level of construction. However, there has been major progress right now needing to fix it recently. It's projected that 160,000 vehicles and about $2 billion in freight cross this bridge daily. Now, to those who keep asking, what has Biden ever done for our country? Well, in case you've forgotten, under this administration, the most extensive and the greatest infrastructure bill of $1 trillion is the reason why this project is underway. $1.6 billion in federal grants will go to repair the bridge and build a new bridge that is adjacent to it. The whole project itself is going to cost about $3.6 billion with Ohio and Kentucky working together on this. I mean, this is great. This is exactly the kind of bipartisan agreement, because the bipartisan infrastructure bill is one of the most extensive infrastructure bills in recent history. We haven't invested this much in our infrastructure in decades, and that's pathetic. Now, I just got to ask a question for all of you out there that say you're America first. Why aren't you supporting this? Why are you so against our country focusing on our infrastructure? You complain about us sending money to other countries, but you gripe about who's going to pay for these infrastructure projects. Well, guess what? We are. Who else? That's where our tax dollars go to. The money isn't going to come out of thin air. Our tax dollars go towards our infrastructure. And as of right now, our country across the world ranks 13th in infrastructure. There are 4,500 bridges that are in complete poor condition and need to be repaired. You want to talk about America first? This is America first. It's not some cheap slogan that you can put on a t-shirt to be sold at your next rally, which is exactly what knuckleheads who talk about America first, but they don't do jack tilly squat about making America first. They just talk about it. They just say, oh, we need to make America great again. We need to make America first, America first, America first. But they don't actually put forth any real legislation to make America first. They just think America first sounds like a cool slogan to have. But we are so far behind the rest of the developed world, it's an absolute joke when it comes down to it. I mean, let me ask you all a question. Why don't we have high-speed rail in this country? Why don't we have that? I'll tell you why. It's because people cannot think far ahead. They are not thinking ahead about the benefits. They're not seeing the pros and the cons. They're just seeing cons about using this. And I've heard the argument made by some knuckleheads on social media, which I don't really pay them any attention because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. But they're saying, we don't need 1800s technology to get us in, be able to travel, which is a crock of shit. I'll tell you this much. As someone who took the Bahnhof, which is the train, in Germany many, many times, and even took the ICE train, which is one of the fastest trains in the country, I can tell you there are great benefits to having the train. It's fast, it's reliable, it is punctual, and you get a chance to see the country from the ground. I mean, when I say it's punctual, if that train is supposed to be there at 12:02 p.m., it will be there at 12:02 p.m. I mean, that's how good it is. It might be 1 or 2 minutes behind or something like that, but it's just they have a system so well put in place. It is absolutely bonkers like how amazing it works. But yet, for some reason, why can't we have it here? I mean, there are trains that will take you from New York to Chicago. It'll take you a few days to do it. I mean, like, I don't know how many hours it'll take you to do it, but it'll take you a much longer time to get from New York to Chicago, when in China, they could do it in 4 hours on the same distance. Why can't we do that? It's ludicrous that we have something like this pass us by. I mean, for crying out loud, we use rail to haul freight from Los Angeles, California to Chicago, Illinois, where truck drivers like myself grab at rail yards to make our deliveries. Why can't we have high-speed rail? Are you worried about the upkeep? Well, that's why you got to pay your rail workers, honestly. That's why you got to take care of your employees. I mean, this stuff is just not going to grow on trees, for crying out loud. Neither are the employees. You've got to give people the incentive to be able to work at these companies. It's that simple. I mean, some people won't even like taking the trains, but some people don't like to fly anymore because it's such a hassle. Imagine, if you would, that you could have a high-speed rail system that stretches from one side of the country to the next, where it'll take you, I don't know, a day or two, like maybe a day, to travel from one side of the country to the next. You don't have to worry about driving. You don't have to worry about flying. You'll get to see the country still. You'll still get served your 3 meals. I mean, I've been on trains where, like, you can, like, sleep in cabins. It's really comfortable, actually. Now, not everybody likes to be on trains, but honestly, it's not that bad. I mean, hell, I remember when I was stationed in Germany, there were days where, like, I would take the train at, like, 4 o'clock in the morning from Munich back to Vilseck, and I would crash out, and I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, but because I had my ticket already, I mean, they would just come by and just stamp the ticket, and you're good to go. I mean, I've racked out on the train plenty of times, but guess what? I still got to my destination safely. There's more benefits to having a high-speed rail system. It will take a very long time for us to make it, but I can guarantee it will actually help us out in the long run, too. Again, can somebody give me a reason why we can't have high-speed rail? I would love to see that in this country. Bridges and roads are essential, not just for truck drivers, but for the average citizen. There are bridges that need extensive repair. Now, don't get me wrong. It sucks sometimes when you have to experience traffic, especially road construction. But I tell you what, though, I'd much rather have that damn road construction, those bridges being fixed, and fixing the issues before they become an even bigger problem. You know, pushing me off to the wayside, say, it can wait, it can wait, it can wait. It doesn't solve the problem. You're just, prolonging the inevitable, I'd say. As the saying goes, bad news does not get better with time. Well, neither does infrastructure. Faulty infrastructure does not get better with time. It gets better with people. People that come together to fix the issues we face in our nation. Now, we have to spend more time fixing the issues that have a drastic impact on our society. Infrastructure is definitely one of those issues. And this administration is doing a hell of a great job with the infrastructure bill, and Biden, along with his other people, deserve our eternal thanks for it, especially if it helps us in the long run. Infrastructure is so key to keeping a society alive. If you got bad infrastructure, you're going to have a bad society. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a great deal of time. But again, the fact that we actually had this infrastructure bill put into place, and the fact that they're actually taking the steps, and that you got Republicans and Democrats coming together and saying, yes, it's about time we have something like this put together. What does that tell you? It means this is a good thing. This is what America First truly means. There's no other way for me to say it. So, the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, had some sparring to do with Brent Baer of Fox News over his recent trip to the Netherlands with his husband, Chasten, accompanying him. Now, you're going to listen. You just listen to this.
You also brought your husband, Chasten, on a military aircraft to attend a sporting event in Netherlands. Was that
That's quite a spin to put on.
No. But I mean, was that reimbursed? Because that was one of the controversies with price.
I led a presidential delegation to support American wounded warriors and injured service members, the Invictus Games, as has been tradition for many years. I led the American delegation as one of the great honors of my time in this job. And the diplomatic protocol on a presidential delegation is that the principal is often accompanied by their spouse. It was a great trip. It was incredible. Before me, it was the Secretary of the Army under President Trump who took that trip with his wife. Before that, it was Mrs. Trump as First Lady who went to the Invictus Games. Before that, Mrs. Obama did the same thing.
Sure.
And I guess the question on my mind is, if no one's raising questions about why Secretary Esper and his wife led that delegation, and as well they should have, then why is it any different when it's me and my husband?
Understood.
I tell you, this just makes me want to vote for him again when he runs for president. I mean, this guy is going to make a great president someday if he runs again. I mean, screw you haters who don't like him because of his sexual preference. You can just go to hell as far as I'm concerned. This guy will make a great president. Now, for those not aware what the Invictus Games is, it was started by Prince Harry, who's also a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, and as a means of giving wounded warriors something to look forward to. This is the Special Olympics for wounded warriors. And my wife, she actually traveled with our good friend Christina Truesdale, who competed in 3 events in Australia. This is a terrific event, and I am so glad that something like this exists. Because me, I'm fortunate that I have all my appendages, my health, and my life. Many do not have that. Now, there are many veterans out there that struggle day to day with their demons and the challenges in life that they have to overcome nowadays after their service. Games like these give them a chance to live for something once again. And as a veteran, I can tell you, nothing, and I mean nothing, matters more than feeling like you need a purpose. Now, I keep mentioning this. I still work right now as a truck driver, and I feel like I have that purpose in life. I feel like I am making a difference. These wounded warriors are given that second chance at life. And Prince Harry created this so they can live this second chance to their fullest. This is a good thing. This is a great thing that Prince Harry created. It's giving them hope. Now, you can say what you want about Prince Harry, but I love him for this. I love the fact that he created something like this that gives veterans a chance at life. They can live again. Because I cannot imagine what they'd be going through if they didn't have these Olympic Games, these warrior games for them. It's absolutely amazing. And what better person to send than Secretary Buttigieg? I mean, he's also a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, so this is something very near and dear to his heart. He speaks multiple languages. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He was mayor for South Bend, Indiana. He was voted in there multiple times. And he's the first presidential candidate I have ever donated money to in my life. And I would do it again, too. I mean, but people making a big deal about this is a nothing burger. I mean, for crying out loud, the only reason people are making a big deal about this is because Pete is not married to a woman. He's married to his husband. That's what the big stink is over. It's 2022 and people still can't get over the fact that consenting adults can't marry who they love. Secretary Buttigieg is a good man, a veteran, and a patriot. Now, he's doing a great job, in my opinion, as Secretary of Transportation. Now, is he perfect? Of course not. He's going to make mistakes. That's what we as human beings do. We make mistakes. And guess what? We get crucified for these mistakes, but that's how things are. People are never going to remember your accomplishments, but they will always remind you of your mistakes. I mean, that's just the fact of life. But people are mad at him for taking his husband to an event where he's allowed to take his spouse, for crying out loud. He even talked about it. I mean, he's not groaning that other people are ready to take with their spouse. He's just remarking the fact that everyone's just getting on his case because he took his husband. Now, there are some people that have legitimate criticisms due to their air travel that was canceled over the holiday, especially during Christmas. But the Department of Transportation has worked consistently to inform the populace, should you have any issues with your air travel and they will reimburse you, you can go to the Department of Travel website and they can walk you to the parts of the website to navigate and address your concerns. Now, is it going to get solved overnight? Of course not. Shit happens. And it sucks that so many people didn't get travel over the holidays. I get it. I understand the frustration. Now, the government isn't the one and only answer. However, they can provide some answers. Regardless, he's still going to take flack over this. But again, this is such a nothing burger. I mean, you heard him say it. I mean, it's like, why should I have to reimburse them? I mean, why should I reimburse for something that my spouse is entitled to travel with me? I mean, what he took part in is a great honor. He was representing the President of the United States. He was as a delegate at the Invictus Games. I mean, why are people making a big deal about this? Well, I told you why they're making a big deal. They are choosing to be angry about this when it's not even anything to be angry about. He is an Afghanistan veteran of the war, just like me. Now, granted, he might have done one deployment, but it's a lot more than what most other people do, especially the people that claim to be patriots. Now, I'm not trying to dog on those people that didn't serve, but the thing is, how is it you're going to say that Pete Buttigieg isn't a real veteran or anything like that? How are you going to say that what he did is screwed up and he needs to reimburse the American people? Did you feel the same way when Mark Esper did it when he was Secretary of the Army? Did you feel the same way when Melania Trump did it? I should hope not. This is an important occasion where politics needs to be just taken out the window, honestly. This is a great event, and I'm so glad that he was there to represent the President of the United States as a delegate. And guess what? I want Pete Buttigieg to run for president again. I'll even work on his damn campaign. Absolutely. I would work on his campaign in a heartbeat, for crying out loud, because I'm a big fan of his. And again, I don't expect Pete Buttigieg to be perfect, because he isn't. But the thing is, he understands these things. But the qualifications, the things that he's done in his life, make me want to respect him. Not because of his political affiliation, but because the person he is. And all the adversity he had to go through. Much respect to Pete Buttigieg, and much respect for Chasten for taking the blows as they come. So the Kremlin has decided to ask for a ceasefire for the war in Ukraine to recognize the Russian Orthodox Christmas. It seems though some troops on the front line didn't get the memo. Russian and Ukrainian troops have still been exchanging fire on the front lines, even after Putin asked for the 36-hour ceasefire. Now, I'm not one to speculate as to why he would call for the ceasefire. It's Vladimir Putin. He's a professional spy of the former KGB. Putin knows he is losing this war as far as I'm tracking. His country is getting choked out with sanctions and they have to seek help from other countries. He's consistently losing troops, many who don't even want to frickin' be there. And he's losing equipment at an alarming rate. And who knows what will happen should this war continue. Now, the argument has been made many, many times on social media platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, and even Discord, which I spend a great deal of time on. People wonder, why is it we even send money to Ukraine? Well, I'll bite. I'll take an answer to that question. Because if Russia wins, what will stop them from invading another country? Now, there are people out there that say that Ukraine is more corrupt than Russia. I'm sorry, I find that really, really hard to believe, considering the fact that we still don't know what Putin's motivations are. And remember, he's the invading force, not Ukraine. What are Putin's intentions? Now, I, for one, definitely don't trust Putin. Now, neither should any of the people of Ukraine. He's already shown he cannot be trusted on the world stage, and for all we know, he called for the ceasefire to put his troops into better positions. I mean, if I was Putin, that's exactly what I'd be doing. I'd be thinking ahead, because all warfare is based upon deception. But again, I have no idea. I'm just speculating at this point. Let's just not beat around the bush here, though. Russia is the aggressor, not Ukraine. Ukraine is defending its territory. And should Putin agree to come to the negotiation table, it should be Zelensky setting the terms, and Putin has got to agree to them. Zelensky should not let anything slide. Zelensky isn't going to ask for anything out of the ordinary, but the lands that belong to Ukraine to go back to Ukraine. And Russia needs to leave and stay in their own damn country. Because, let's just be perfectly honest right now. If Zelensky gives any ground to Putin, for example, if Putin asks for new territories in Ukraine and Zelensky accepts, I don't think it's going to go well for him and the credibility that he has. I give Zelensky full credit for sticking around and staying with his people. I give him full credit for staying with his country, because we all saw what happened in Afghanistan when the president of Afghanistan split. After that, the entire morale of the entire military just collapsed completely. But because Zelensky has stayed, and because he believes in the fighting spirit of his people, they have had a stronger resolve to fight back against Russia. But should Zelensky give any ground to Russia, I don't think it would be good for him whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I think it would ruin his credibility, and I can definitely guarantee he would never get into office ever again. Now, I'm not saying Zelensky is a perfect individual. There's no such thing as a perfect individual. However, if Zelensky gives any ground to Putin, Putin is going to, and if Putin is given an advantage whatsoever, it's not going to look good for the country of Ukraine. Russia is the bully. Russia is the corrupt country. Russia is the one that's in the wrong here. Not Zelensky. Not Ukraine. So why do we give them money? Because let's put it this way. If Russia invaded Ukraine and we did nothing to help them, how would that look for the United States? We claim to be the beacon upon the hill, that we're always going to stand up for what's right. If the UN and everybody else said, well, wait a second, why isn't the U.S. helping out? That would just damage our credibility. And a little of the fact that you know for damn well that the conservative base and the MAGA Republicans would be like, oh, look at Biden. He's so weak. He doesn't want to help out Ukraine. If Trump was in office, he would have helped out Ukraine. That's exactly what would have happened. I guarantee it too. But because he's helping out Ukraine, oh, look at Biden. He's so weak. It's because he's covering up his business deals with Burisma. That's why he's helping out Ukraine. Even though these people have no proof about that. I mean, they're just making up any reason. They don't want to help out Ukraine. Simply because of politics. That's why they don't want to help out Ukraine. You always hear these idiots out there. It's like, oh, well, you know, why are we helping out Ukraine? We got starving veterans back here who don't get any housing. We've got homeless people on the streets. Well, guess what? We've had those same veterans for the past 20 damn years. And I haven't seen you all, any of you, say the same shit about this. You pretend to care and use them as a pedestal to push your politics across. These veterans have been homeless for 20 years, and you have done nothing to help them. No president has. Nobody has done something to help these veterans. You've got homeless people in this country that have been homeless for 30 goddamn years. Nobody's done anything to help them. But when it comes to a situation like immigration or the situation in Afghanistan or the situation in Ukraine, now you care about them? Bullshit. You don't care about them. You're just using them as props. That's all you're doing right now. The fact of the matter is we are helping them because it's the right thing to do. Because if Putin takes over Ukraine and he feels emboldened, what's to stop him from going to the next country that used to be part of the USSR? Who's going to stop him? Are we now going to step in? I mean, if he tried to take Estonia over, well, then we have to definitely step in because of Article 5. But the fact of the matter is, it's the right thing to help out Ukraine. Integrity means to do the right thing when nobody else is watching. The world was watching us, and we made the right decision by working with the rest of the UN and working with the rest of the EU to fight back against Russia. But we are not getting any soldiers involved. There are people from this country that are volunteering themselves. Not because they're being mandated to, but they are volunteering themselves to fight back against this oppressive regime known as Russia. And I fully support the Ukrainian people. And I just want to say to the Russian people that don't want to be a part of this, I'm sorry that you got such a douchebag for a leader. He's a scumbag. He's a horrible human being. Putin is a shady individual. And I'm sorry that so many of your sons and daughters have to die because of him. So my last topic for tonight. So I woke up Tuesday morning at around 2 or 3 o'clock, which is my usual time to wake up. And the first thing I usually do during football season when I can't watch a late night game is I check the scores. So I went to ESPN.com. And when I looked at the Monday night score between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills, which I knew was going to be a good game, I saw the score 7-3, and I was like, wait, that's it? That was the score? Then I read that the game was suspended. That's when I saw all the notifications on my phone from every social media outlet and news outlet that my phone gets about an injured player. And I watched the replay of Damar Hamlin tackling wide receiver T. Higgins. And then after he got up after tackling him, he collapsed to the ground and was unresponsive. And I knew right away that something was terribly wrong. Medical teams responded immediately and began giving him CPR to restart his heart as he had gone into cardiac arrest. And what's worse is his mother was in the stands and she watched as her son collapsed on the field. Now, I, for one, cannot imagine what she was thinking when she saw what happened to her son. Eventually, they restarted his heart, but they had to put him in an ambulance, and the ambulance took him off the field. And he was then taken to Cincinnati Hospital. Since he's been in the hospital, he's remained in stable but critical condition. Then yesterday, he finally opened his eyes, and while he couldn't speak because he still had a breathing tube in his mouth, the first thing he did was ask for a pen and paper. And he wrote down the piece of paper, who won? I mean, that's the first thing that's on his mind, who won? The doctor told him, you won. You won the game of life, which is such a powerful statement. And today, Damar had his breathing tube removed, and he is now able to speak and communicate. He is able to talk to his teammates via FaceTime, and he told them that he loves them. Now, for starters, I want to give full credit to the coaches, the players, and, yes, actually the NFL for not wanting to continue to play the game. Regardless of the fallout, I give them full credit for stopping the game. And regardless of how some other people might feel, there are some things that are more important than sports. Now, these guys, these athletes, they train their entire lives for these moments of glory on the football field. But you know what? There are some things that are more important than a game. And of course, there are some naysayers out there who think, well, wait a second. If this happens in a regular working job, do they shut the whole business down? Well, of course not. Everyone else just sucks it up and just drives on. Well, honestly, that's kind of a problem, honestly. The fact that people have to be numbed whenever they see something like this happen, and then they just have to expect to just kind of carry on with work and just pretend like nothing happened, it's kind of a screwed up way to look at things in society. Now, there was an episode on Last Week Tonight where they were talking about warehouses, and John Oliver covered it, where it was a warehouse in Memphis, Tennessee, and inside temperatures, because there was no AC, where inside temperatures were reaching like well above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, People weren't allowed to take very many breaks. There was a woman that was in her 60s that was complaining about chest pains, and she was feeling lightheaded, and her manager told her to just kind of get over it. And she ended up collapsing, and she ended up dying, and people were told just to go back to work. That's a screwed up way to live in this country. Nobody should ever be forced to go through something like this. I mean, it's a really screwed up way of thinking that just because somebody nearly dies that you should just be able to continue with the game. Now, before anybody tries to give me grief about this and tries to bring up, oh, well, what about our soldiers? I need you all to remember something. Soldiers have to drive on if they lose a friend because we are conditioned to do so. Soldiers have to because they have no other choice. Now, on the battlefield, if a soldier loses a friend like right away, the first thing you have to do is put rounds on target and get rid of the threat before you render aid. This situation wasn't taking place. There was nobody shooting at them on the football field. They rendered aid right away. They stopped the football game, which is good. Soldiers, however, have a different task at hand. They have to eliminate the threat, and once the threat's been eliminated, they have to perform immediate aid, life-saving aid, and then get them to the nearest hospital. Failure to do so could result in death. The situations are not the same. They are not similar. You can't expect people to continue to function, especially when somebody close to them just suffered of a medical condition that could have killed them. I mean, for all intents and purposes, he was dead. Damar Hamlin was dead. His mother watched him do it. His mother watched him collapse on the field. Of course they're going to stop the game. These athletes are not conditioned to watch their friends die on the football field. They shouldn't have to. This is a sport. This is something they train their entire lives for, but they should not be prepared to watch a friend of theirs die. Some things are more important than athletics and sports. And the fact that they cut the game is a credit to the NFL. Because for years we have been blasting the NFL that they have not been taking, brain injuries seriously. Because we've seen NFL athletes just go absolutely ballistic and haywire, or they die of their injuries years later. I mean, it's absolutely horrific to think about. Traumatic brain injury plays a lot into people's mental health and their psyche, but not enough is being done about that. I mean, I could go into this all day long, but the fact of the matter is these football players are not supposed to have to worry about whether they might lose their friend today on the football field. Injuries happen, yes. Now, if it's like a guy breaks his leg, then yeah, they're going to continue. But we're talking about something very serious. A man could have died on that football field. I mean, just think about the emotional impact that would have. I mean, just think about the emotional impact that T. Higgins had. People were blaming him for what happened. I mean, he was emotionally distraught about that, but to the credit of the Hamlin family, they said, please stop blaming T. Higgins for this. He was not responsible for this. He was just playing the game. Just like everybody was there playing the game. It's nobody's fault to what happened. And what makes it even worse is you got idiots out there that talk about how, well, the reason why this happened is because he was vaccinated. I mean, we're seeing healthy people die just because they got vaccinated. You don't know that. You're speculating. It's because you're anti-vax and you're spreading your propaganda, you're spreading your bullshit because it makes you feel better inside that you didn't get vaccinated. There's no proof. There's nothing to back up your statement. And the fact that you're using what he's going through right now to spread your own message just goes to show how far you're willing to go. It's bullshit. It's terrible. We don't know why he went into cardiac arrest. All we can say is right now, I'm so glad that he's alive. We can all just breathe a sigh of relief that he's alive. But I don't know how many people are just going to continue to say, well, this is the reason why, because it makes people feel better knowing that they can just spread this bullshit around. I'm just glad that Mr. Hamlin is alive. He's only 24 years old. Now, I want the NFL, once the season still does continue, games will continue on Sunday. I think the NFL starting in the offseason, or even starting now, need to really take a good hard look about the physiology of the human body and understand what is it that, and try to learn from this and understand how is it that a healthy young man at the top in peak physical shape went into cardiac arrest. What are some stages and what are some things that we can do to improve the game overall? Because yes, these athletes are out there to entertain us, and we go out there, we'll buy the tickets, we'll drink the beer, we'll go out there and cheer our favorite teams and watch them just beat the hell out of each other on the football field. But the thing is, we also have to ask, what can we do to further protect them? And I know football is a very physical sport. I'm not denying it's not a physical sport. But the thing is, though, I'm all about it being physical, but not at the expense of somebody losing their life over. In the history of the NFL, one person did lose their life while playing the sport of football. And it should never, ever happen again. No athlete should ever lose their life doing something that they have trained their entire lives for. That's just what I firmly believe. So Roger Goodell really needs to take some time and bring in the best physical trainers that money can buy to find out what we can do to make things better for these athletes. Because of these players, the owners have the funding to get new stadiums, to bring concessions in, and Roger Goodell still has a really high-paying job right now. I just want everybody to remember that it's so important that we remember that these players are not animals. They are people. They are human beings. And we have got to be thankful that Mr. Hamlin is doing well. Damar Hamlin is alive, and I hope that he has a good recovery, honestly. And I hope he has a long, healthy life, honestly. I'm looking forward to see what's going to happen on Sunday, though, when Seattle takes on the Rams. We owe the Rams an ass-kicking, let's put it that way, because I hate the Rams completely. So, but anyway, I want to take the time to thank everybody that's listened tonight and everybody that's listening on the replay. If you haven't done so, please feel free to hit like and share and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much, everybody that's continued to support me in this podcast, and thank you so much to everybody that has pushed me to continue to do this podcast. I could not do this without you. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. This has been a podcast brought to you by the Alex Kirsch Project. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you and have a good evening.